Britain taught the world how to tunnel. The Victorians carved through solid rock with nothing but muscle and gunpowder. They bored beneath rivers that engineers said could never be crossed. They connected cities through mountains that had separated communities for thousands of years. Isambard Kingdom Brunel, Mark Brunel, Robert Stevenson. Names that belong in the same breath as any general or statesman. This nation built the first underground railway, the first tunnel beneath a navigable river, the longest, the deepest, the most ambitious passages through stone that the world had ever seen. But engineers talk differently when the lights are off. I have spent months going through construction records and coroner reports, incident logs that were never meant to be public. What I found was consistent across generations, across different tunnels, across different industries. There are places beneath Britain where something is not right. Let us begin beneath London itself. The Highgate tunnels sit beneath one of the most affluent neighbourhoods in the capital. Most Londoners have never heard of them. They were supposed to be part of an ambitious Northern Line extension called the Northern Heights Plan. Construction began before the Second World War. The tunnels were partially completed. Platforms were built, track beds were laid, and then in 1954, the project was cancelled. The tunnels were simply abandoned. They have remained there ever since. Empty platforms beneath empty streets, passages that lead nowhere, track beds that have never felt the weight of a train. Transport for London maintains access to these tunnels for structural inspections. The protocols are specific, always in pairs. Always with radio contact maintained throughout, never alone. Urban explorers who have accessed these tunnels report consistent phenomena, footsteps that follow movement through the passages, station name boards that appear illuminated despite there being no power supply to the section, the smell of coal smoke in passages that were built for electric trains and have never seen steam. A track inspector who worked the Northern Line for 23 years submitted an incident report in 2019. He had been conducting a routine survey of a connecting passage approximately 400 metres from the nearest entrance. The report states that he heard a child laughing. The sound came from deeper within the tunnel, from a section that had no access point and no reason for anyone to be present. He completed his survey at an accelerated pace and requested reassignment to a different section of the network. The request was granted. Travelling northwest from London, beneath the River Mersey, we find a tunnel that carries 40,000 vehicles every day. The Queensway tunnel connects Liverpool to Birkenhead. It was opened by King George V in 1934 after nearly a decade of construction. 2.87 kilometres of roadway beneath one of Britain's great rivers. 17 workers died during construction. Falls from scaffolding. Tunnel collapses in unstable sections. Equipment failures. The compressed air environment that allowed workers to excavate beneath the riverbed caused long-term health problems for many who survived. They called it tunnel sickness. Men would surface after their shifts dizzy and disoriented. Some suffered joint damage that lasted the rest of their lives. The tunnel has been in continuous operation for 90 years. Night maintenance crews keep it running. These crews work between midnight and 5 in the morning when traffic is lightest. They have reported the same phenomenon for decades. A figure in the ventilation galleries. A man dressed in work clothes that appear to be from the 1930s. He is always walking away from whoever sees him. He never responds when they call out. He turns a corner and is gone. The cold section is something else entirely. Near the Birkenhead portal, approximately 200 metres in, there is a stretch where the temperature drops noticeably. Engineers have measured it. They have checked the ventilation systems. They have examined the tunnel structure for any explanation. There is none. The cold is simply there. It moves against the traffic. It passes through. South of London, in the rolling farmland of Wiltshire, there is a tunnel that engineers consider one of the finest examples of Victorian construction anywhere in the world. The Box Tunnel was Isambard Kingdom Brunel's masterpiece of railway engineering. Nearly 3 kilometres were cut through solid limestone on the Great Western Main Line between Bath and Chippenham. It was completed in 1841 after 5 years of brutal construction. Over 100 workers died building the box tunnel. The limestone was harder than expected. Gunpowder blasts killed men without warning. Rock falls crushed workers in the narrow shaft. The conditions were medieval: candles for light, hand tools for excavation, brute strength for everything else. The villages near the tunnel portals contain mass graves. Workers who died during construction were buried locally because their families could not afford to transport the bodies home. Many were Irish labourers who had crossed the sea for work. Their graves are unmarked. Their names are lost. Network rail track workers who maintain the box tunnel have reported sounds emanating from sealed passages. Knocking that follows no pattern. Movement that has no source. A 2014 incident log references unexplained audio interference during a routine inspection. The inspector noted in his report that he felt observed from the disused workings. He used that phrase specifically. Observed. As if something in the sealed sections was watching him work. The bodies of Victorian workers were never all recovered from the box tunnel. Some remain within the stone. The tunnel was built through them and around them. When you pass through the box tunnel on a Great Western service, you pass through a cemetery. Crossing the Pennines into Yorkshire, we find a tunnel that demands something different from those who pass through it. The Standedge Tunnel is the longest canal tunnel in Britain. 5.2 kilometres cut through the highest part of the South Pennines. It connects the Huddersfield Narrow Canal to the canal network of Greater Manchester. Construction took 17 years. It was completed in 1811. There is no towpath inside the Standedge Tunnel. There never was. The tunnel is too narrow. When working boats used this route, they employed men called leggers. These men would lie flat on their backs on boards extending from the boat. They would press their feet against the tunnel ceiling and walk. Step by step, in complete darkness, for over 3 miles, they would propel the boat through by pushing against the stone above them. The canal tunnel is still navigable today. Boat passage requires advance booking and is strictly controlled. But running alongside the canal tunnel are the remains of 3 railway tunnels. All railway traffic ceased in 1966. The tunnels were left to flood and decay. Urban explorers who have accessed the abandoned railway tunnels report phenomena that align remarkably with those reported from other sites. Breathing sounds that follow movement through the passages. Lights that appear and then extinguish with no source. The sensation of hands brushing against clothing in the darkness. A structural survey team entered the disused railway tunnel in 2018 to assess potential restoration options. One team member refused to continue past the 1.3 kilometre mark. He later told his colleagues that he had heard his name called from deeper within the tunnel. The voice came from the darkness ahead, from a section that had been sealed for over 50 years. The survey was completed with a reduced team. The restoration project has not proceeded. The final tunnel in our first group lies beneath the Black Country in the West Midlands. The Dudley Canal Tunnel is part of a network that winds through abandoned limestone mines dating back to the 1700s. 2.9 kilometres of navigable darkness connect the canal system to the industrial heritage of the region. The tunnel passes through caverns where limestone was extracted for centuries. In the darkness, the passage opens out into vast underground chambers. Cathedrals of stone carved by generations of miners. The boat enters a narrow tunnel and suddenly finds itself in a space the size of a church, lit only by whatever light the boater carries. Boat operators on this route report consistent anomalies. Their lights illuminate figures standing on the cavern ledges, dark shapes at the edge of visibility. When the boat approaches, there is nothing. When it passes, there is the sensation of being watched from behind. A local historian spent 20 years documenting testimonies from tunnel boat crews. Between 1990 and 2010, he collected over 40 accounts. The descriptions are remarkably consistent across different witnesses who did not know each other. A figure in dark clothing, standing still, always at the edge of the light, never moving, never responding, simply watching. Now we turn to tunnels where the darkness is not merely atmospheric. These are places with documented death tolls, official inquests, engineering failures that cost lives, and changed how Britain approached underground construction forever. The Thames Tunnel holds a unique place in engineering history. It was the first tunnel successfully constructed beneath a navigable river. Mark Brunel and his son Isambard began work in 1825. They expected construction to take 3 years. It took 18 years. The human cost was catastrophic. The tunnel flooded 5 times during construction. Major inundations in 1827 and 1828 killed workers and nearly ended the project entirely. At least 6 men died in documented incidents. The true toll was likely higher. Mark Brunel himself nearly drowned during one flooding. His son Isambard was severely injured in the 1828 disaster. He was carried from the tunnel unconscious and spent months recovering. The tunnel that made the Brunel name nearly killed both men who built it. The tunnel finally opened in 1843. It became a pedestrian crossing, then a railway tunnel. Today, transport for London Overground services run through the Thames Tunnel on the East London line. Thousands of passengers pass through daily without knowing they travel through one of the most hard-won engineering achievements in history. Maintenance crews who work the section report a figure near the original Rotherhithe shaft, a man in Victorian dress, always facing away from the observer, always standing where the pumping engines once worked to keep the water at bay. The Woodhead Tunnel cuts through the Pennines between Manchester and Sheffield. When it opened in 1845, it was the longest railway tunnel in the world. 4.8 kilometres of passage through some of the most difficult ground Victorian engineers ever encountered. The death toll during construction was staggering. Between 28 and 32 workers died in the 5 years it took to build. Hundreds more were injured. Contemporary observers compared the mortality rates to military combat. A government inquiry known as the Woodhead Report was published in 1846. It found that the death rate among tunnel construction workers exceeded the death rate at the Battle of Waterloo. Cholera swept through the worker camps. Rock falls crushed men without warning. Gunpowder accidents killed and maimed. A mass grave near the western portal contains workers who could not be identified. They were buried together because no one knew their names. They were far from home. Many were Irish. Many were Welsh. They came for work and never left. The original Woodhead Tunnel closed in 1981. It now carries high-voltage electricity cables across the Pennines. Access is extremely restricted. Only authorised electrical workers may enter. These workers report phenomena that railway staff never documented. Lights that flicker despite the supply being stable. The sound of picks striking rock. Voices in what sounds like the dialects of the navvies who built the line. Irish, Welsh. The accents of men who died nearly 200 years ago. One engineer who maintains the cable route told a local historian something that has stayed with me. He said he has worked electrical cables in every tunnel in the north of England. He said Woodhead is the only one where he feels unwelcome. The Clayton Tunnel lies beneath the South Downs in Sussex. It opened in 1841 as part of the London to Brighton Railway. It is 2.2 kilometres long, cutting through the chalk downland. At the northern end, the tunnel features one of the most distinctive entrance portals in Britain. A grand castellated structure that looks like the gateway to a castle. On the 25th of August 1861, that gateway became the entrance to a disaster. 3 trains entered the Clayton Tunnel in quick succession that day. A signalling failure created confusion about which trains were in the tunnel and which had cleared it. 2 trains collided inside the passage. 23 passengers were killed. 176 were injured. The tunnel was single track at that section. there was nowhere to escape. Passengers found themselves trapped in splintered wooden carriages in complete darkness. Steam from the locomotives filled the tunnel. Fire broke out. The screams of the dying echoed from walls that offered no exit. The subsequent inquiry transformed railway safety regulations across Britain. New signalling systems were mandated. The disaster led directly to improvements that saved thousands of lives in the decades that followed. But none of that helped the 23 who died in the darkness beneath the Downs. The Clayton Tunnel remains in use today. Southern Railway services pass through regularly. Track workers have reported sounds of screaming during night maintenance. An incident report from the 1990s documents 2 workers who refused to complete a late shift after hearing voices in distress. Voices that no living person in the tunnel could account for. The Severn Tunnel crosses the border between England and Wales beneath the estuary of the River Severn. When it opened in 1886, it was an engineering triumph. 7.01 kilometres, the longest mainline railway tunnel in Britain. It remained so for over a century. Construction took 14 years. In 1879, workers broke through into the Great Spring, an underground river that no survey had predicted. Water flooded the workings at a rate that threatened to end the project entirely. Engineers installed the most powerful pumps available, and they ran those pumps continuously. They still do. If the pumps at Sudbrook stop running, the Severn Tunnel floods within 24 hours. For 139 years, the pumping station has been staffed around the clock. Every single day, every single night. The tunnel exists because of those pumps. Without them, the Severn would reclaim what the Victorians took. The pumping station at Sudbrook sits at the Welsh end of the tunnel. Workers who staff it through the night shifts report unexplained phenomena. Footsteps in the pump house when they are alone. The sensation of being watched from the tunnel entrance. Equipment moved between shifts when no one else has been present. A former employee shared an entry from the pump house log on a railway forum in 2012. The entry was dated 3:47 in the morning. It read, "Heard whistling from tunnel approach. Checked camera. Nobody. 3rd time this month. The pumps continue their work. The tunnel carries passengers who will never know how close the water remains. And somewhere in the night, something whistles in the darkness before dawn." The Blisworth Tunnel carries the Grand Union Canal through Northamptonshire. It was completed in 1805 after 12 years of catastrophic construction. 2.8 kilometres through ground that simply refused to be tunnelled. The original contractor died before the tunnel was finished. 2 further contractors took on the work and failed. The tunnel collapsed repeatedly. The death toll is unknown because records were not properly kept, but contemporary sources describe the losses as appalling. It remains navigable today. It is the 3rd longest canal tunnel in Britain. Boats still pass through in complete darkness. There are no lights. The passage takes approximately 40 minutes. Boaters who make this crossing report phenomena that have been consistent for generations. Cold spots that move against the direction of travel. The sound of falling rock when nothing falls. Lights that illuminate faces in the water. Faces that should not be there. A narrowboat community forum contains over 60 threads discussing experiences in the Blisworth Tunnel. The consistency of these accounts is notable. People who do not know each other describing the same sensations, the same sounds, the same reluctance to make the passage alone. We come now to the tunnels where the darkness is heaviest and where the phenomena are most persistent. The Clyde Tunnel carries traffic beneath the River Clyde in Glasgow. Twin bored tunnels opened in 1963. It was modern construction with a clean engineering history. No recorded deaths occurred during the build. Everything about the Clyde Tunnel should make it unremarkable. It is not unremarkable. Glasgow drivers report phenomena that Police Scotland has logged but cannot explain. Vehicles stop mid-tunnel with no mechanical fault. Drivers report figures standing in the roadway who vanish when approached. The emergency phones mounted on the tunnel walls receive calls from inside the tunnel. When the calls are answered, there is only silence. A 2008 Freedom of Information request revealed 47 unexplained incident reports from the Clyde Tunnel between 1990 and 2007. The nature of these incidents was not disclosed in the response. The pattern was acknowledged. The explanation was not provided. Tunnel staff follow a protocol. If something is reported in the tunnel, they check the CCTV. If the CCTV shows nothing, they note it in the log and move on. They do not investigate in person. They do not walk the tunnel alone. The Charwelton Tunnel lies beneath the fields of Northamptonshire. It was part of the Great Central Railway, opened in 1897 and closed in 1966. It has been abandoned for nearly 60 years. The tunnel flooded after closure. The structure began to collapse. Both portals were sealed. Today, it is considered too dangerous to enter by any means. During the Second World War, the tunnel served a purpose that few people remember. Trains loaded with ammunition were stored in its darkness. The tunnel became an underground magazine. Explosives sat beneath the English countryside in complete secrecy. Local farmers whose land borders the tunnel report phenomena they cannot explain. They report low vibrations that have no seismic source, lights visible from the sealed portals at night, and most consistently, the sound of a steam engine, clear and distinct, where no engine has run for 6 decades. A structural survey in 2002 was abandoned before completion. Engineers reported unsafe atmospheric conditions that could not be attributed to any chemical source. The AIR itself was wrong. They could not say how. They could only say that they would not continue. The Seaton Tunnel in Devon is only 320 metres long. It was part of a branch line that closed in 1966. Unlike many abandoned railway tunnels, it was not sealed. It was converted to a walking path connecting 2 communities. Locals use it as a shortcut. Children walk through it to reach school. In January 2024, Devon County Council received formal complaints about the tunnel. Multiple walkers reported encounters they could not explain. The council was asked to install lighting and to provide an explanation. The complaints describe experiences that align with reports from much longer tunnels. Walkers reported footsteps that matched their pace but stopped when they stopped. They described the sensation of someone directly behind them, cold air moving against the wind, and, most commonly, an overwhelming desire to run. Not fear exactly, just the absolute certainty that leaving quickly is the right thing to do. A retired engineer who surveyed the tunnel in 1998 spoke to a regional newspaper about the complaints. He said there was nothing wrong with the structure. It was solid Victorian brick. But he also said he had never felt less comfortable underground. He said the tunnel wants you to leave. The Bramhope Tunnel carries the railway through the hills north of Leeds. It opened in 1849. It is 3.4 kilometres long through unstable shale and sandstone. Construction took 5 years and claimed 24 lives. A memorial stands in Otley Churchyard. It is a scale model of the tunnel's northern portal, carved in stone, erected by the railway company after completion. The memorial lists no names. There is only a dedication to the men who lost their lives. 24. Men. We know exactly how many. We do not know who most of them were. They came from elsewhere to work. They died far from home. They were buried in a churchyard that was not their own. Train drivers have reported phenomena for decades. Figures standing on the track that vanish in the headlights. The sensation of passengers boarding at signals where no platform exists. Sounds that carry through the cab. Knocking, shouting, the ring of tools on stone. A driver contacted a railway history forum in 2019 to share an experience he could not explain. He had stopped his train after seeing a group of men crossing the tracks inside the tunnel. They appeared clearly in his headlights. He reported the sighting to control immediately. Track workers were dispatched. They searched the tunnel section. They found nothing. The driver had 30 years of experience on the network. He knew what he saw. He requested a route transfer shortly after the incident. It was granted. The final tunnel on our list is the Balcombe Tunnel in Sussex. It opened in 1841 on the London to Brighton line. It is 1.1 kilometres long through the Wealden Clay. Southern Railway services pass through it daily. But something is different about Balcombe. Railway staff have reported the same phenomenon since at least the 1970s. They describe a woman in Victorian dress standing at the northern portal. She is visible in headlights as trains approach. When the train emerges from the tunnel, she is gone. Signallers have logged her presence at least 17 times in official incident reports spanning 5 decades. The descriptions are consistent across different witnesses in different years. Victorian dress, standing still, watching the train approach. Attempts to identify her have failed. Local historians have searched for any record of a woman killed at or near the Balcombe Tunnel. There is no accident report, no inquest, no explanation for who she might be or why she appears. Yet drivers continue to see her. Always the same location, always the same posture, always watching. A 2015 Freedom of Information request to Network Rail produced a response acknowledging recurring sightings of an unexplained figure at Balcombe. It stated that no further action was required as the sightings do not impact operational safety. She does not impact operational safety. She is simply there. She has been there for at least 50 years, perhaps longer, waiting for a train that has not yet arrived, or waiting to board one that stopped running long ago. Britain tunnelled for empire, for industry, for connection. The nation that taught the world how to dig beneath rivers, mountains and cities paid for that knowledge in lives, in health, in men who never came home. The tunnels remain. They carry our trains, our cars and our narrowboats. They connect our cities and our communities. We pass through them without thinking about what it cost to build them, without thinking about who remains within them. The testimonies of people who actually work with these histories are worth more than any archive.